So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time coming and hearing some of our lessons today. And thank you, of course, for inviting me, Ali and Hannah and Karen and Nicole. So I'm here today to talk to you about the potential of biobanking for a new understanding of the aging process. So I'm going to take you on a journey through the fascinating world, at least I think it's fascinating, fascinating world of biobanking. We're going to talk about the significance of biobank accreditation and the story of the biobank where I've served as a director, which is the Cornell Veterinary Biobank. I'm going to very briefly talk about the lessons we've learned over the last 14 years as we've created a sustainable resource through accreditation. And finally, I will talk about the application of those lessons that we've learned on a next generation resource that we're creating for geoscientists worldwide, and introduce you to our dog aging project, the project that brought me to the Columbine Health System Center for Healthy Aging, and the wonderful team that is hosting our seminar today. So let me start our biobanking story at Cornell and talk about how we got to where we are. Before I do that, I normally include a first slide with my favorite definition of biobanking for those that are new to the concept. This says a biobank is a facility for the collection, preservation, storage, and supply of biological samples and associated data, which follows standardized operating procedures and provides material for scientific and clinical use. And I included this little character called Scrat from Ice Age. I don't know if you know Scrat. Is this little character, as I said, in Ice Age, that's always holding on to his acorn. And so I want to say that to be a biobanker, you need to let go of those samples, or acorns in Scrat's case. Otherwise, you become what we call in the biobanking industry a bio hoarder. So we cannot be like Scrat. So with that focus on sample utilization, we've created the Cornell Veterinary Biobank, which is a biobank of extraordinary non-human participants, at least for now, in February 2006. And at the time, we were following the guidelines that are available in the National Cancer Institute Best Practices for Biospecimen Resources and the ISBER Best Practices for Repositories. ISBER stands for International Society for Biological and Environmental Repositories, and it's the largest biobanking society. So both of these documents are actually available free of charge. They're guidelines for biobanking, and they're both currently in their 4th edition. I've contributed to that second document as an author. Then a few years later, I was introduced to the world of standards when I was invited by the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, or NIST, to represent the US position in biobanking as an ISO expert and delegate for a specific technical committee 276, working group 2, that was working in documents for biobanks and bioresources. For those that are new to ISO, ISO stands for International Organization for Standardization. It is an international standard setting body that's composed of representatives from 164 countries. It's an NGO, was founded in 1947. It is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. It is one of the first organizations that was granted general consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council, which is really the highest status granted by the UN to NGOs, and it allows them to participate in the work of the United Nations. So being introduced to that world, I was in a working group that when I joined, was actually actively working on the first standard for biobanks, the first ISO standard for biobanks. The motivation for this standard was a desire for biological materials, which is what we call samples in this document, and associated data that were of appropriate quality to enable a robust and reliable results that would support reproducibility in research and development. So with that in mind, the first ISO standard came out in August of 2018, and it had a set of requirements and recommendations that were specific to biobanks. So in standards, we call the requirements, or the requirements are always preceded by the word shall, and recommendations are preceded by the word should. So there are different ways actually to demonstrate that you meet the specific requirements or the shalls in this document, okay? So the demonstration that you fulfill a specific requirement is called conformity assessment. And this is the definition that you have in your screen, is a definition from ISO 17000, which is a document on conformity assessment, vocabulary, and general principles. So there are different conformity assessment practices. ISO 20387, which is our biobanking standard, can be used as a tool for attestation at all 3 levels of conformity assessment that I'm going to talk about today. The first party conformity assessment, which is the one that you have in your screen, is a self-declaration of conformity. So it is a conformity assessment activity that's performed by the person or the organization, in this case, it's the biobank, that is the object of conformity assessment. And as you can see here, the biobank implements the standard, and then it states that it conforms to that standard. So the product of this attestation is that self-declaration, right? The biobank is saying, my products conform to the requirements. Oops, here we go. Okay, second party is a conformity assessment activity that's performed by a person or organization that has a user interest in the biobank. So for us would be a user or medical researcher that uses our products. The product of this conformity assessment is a conformity assessment report. So finally, the third party conformity assessment involves an objective independent body evaluation. So it is a conformity assessment activity that's performed by a person or organization that's completely independent of the provider of the object of conformity assessment, has no user interest, in this case, in our biobank. So when third party assessment includes technical competence, that is known as accreditation. That is the difference actually between certification, where technical or personnel competence is not assessed, and accreditation. So technical competence provides an opportunity to the biobank to demonstrate that it's not only able to meet the requirements in its products, but its people, its personnel have the ability to consistently support this quality environment that promotes further user confidence. So the product is a certificate. And as you probably know, our biobank at Cornell went for this most stringent conformity assessment practice. So why would we go for accreditation? It was reported in 2015 in this article that you see on your screen, The Economics of Reproducibility in Preclinical Research, that the US spent a total of $28.2 billion per year in irreproducible research. Of those, 36%, or about $10.1 billion per year, were due to the biological reagents and reference materials. And reference materials are the biological materials or samples. So our responsibility as biobankers is up to $10.1 billion per year. On that same article, there is a reference to published economic research that has shown that standardization and auditing of biological materials through biological resource centers can enhance the cumulative production of scientific knowledge by improving both the availability and the reliability of research inputs. That research data was published in 2011 in the American Economic Review Journal with the sketchy title that you see, Climbing Atop the Shoulders of Giants, the Impact of Institutions on Cumulative Research. So what are the advantages of accreditation for our biobank stakeholders? And I don't know if everyone here is familiar, but who are those stakeholders, right? In biobanking, we say that our stakeholders are primarily our donors or participants, right? The participants that give samples to the biobank, the funders or the sponsors, and then the users or the researchers. So we have three stakeholders, right, in the biobanking industry. Accreditation provides confidence of technical competence in the biobankers themselves, because if you remember, the people are assessed for their competence to perform the work, not just the products, but the people. It also allows us to have control of pre-analytical sample variations. It requires actually the documentation of processes for specific intended purposes, what we call fitness for the intended purpose in the documents. And so there is harmonization of procedures because everything is documented and done on a similar manner every time. And it allows interoperability among biobanks, which is especially important if you have a multi-institutional study that is drawing samples from multiple biobanks. Those advantages promote the accuracy, the comparability, and reproducibility of research results. And we were motivated, of course, by all these advantages, but we have an additional emotional one. So this picture is actually of our Biobank Governance Committee chair, a medical oncologist, a really outstanding translational researcher, Dr. Christie Richards. Christie was a mentor to many of us in the biobank, and she really wanted to see us become the first biobank in the world to receive the ISO accreditation ahead of all of the human biobanks, although she was a physician and a human specimen biobanker herself. Unfortunately, Christie passed away just 4 days before we were assessed for accreditation. So here's our timeline to accreditation. It was a very rapid implementation as we had that extra motivation from our dear mentor, Christie. So ISO 2037, as I told you, was published in August 2018. Shortly after, we started to implement the standards requirements, even though no accreditation body had yet picked up the standards, meaning there was no accreditation program yet. We decided we're going to be compliant regardless. Then our quality assurance manager started working with us around that same time. She helped us create and implement a quality management system. Then at the end of January 2019, finally an accreditation body, it was the American Association of Laboratory Accreditation, or A2LA, launched its accreditation program. And Christie made us apply for accreditation on that same day. So we stayed late. That implementation team that you see on the screen there, and we applied that same day. We received an assessment date for early April, and we thought it was an aggressive enough timeline, but unfortunately, Christie didn't make it through to see it. For the last 6 weeks before our assessment, we had to reduce our operations to the bare minimum so that we could focus on preparing for accreditation. This was an aggressive timeline, and especially for a first-time preparation for accreditation. The reason this worked was due to the collective determination of our amazing team. Everyone was very quickly and easily convinced to get on board. We had an incredible amount of expertise in our implementation team and inspiration from Christie, who really wanted to see us get that ISO accreditation first. So I don't know if you saw that in our previous slide, but we actually had a 2-day assessment. The extent of the assessment really depends on what we call your scope of accreditation, which you submit to the accreditation body ahead of time. So a scope of accreditation is the official and detailed statement of activities for which your biobank is accredited to perform. So this is available online when you receive accreditation, and your users or researchers actually can consult it. This document includes the categories of biological material that we are accredited to handle. Again, biological material is what we call samples in the document. In our case, we're actually accredited to handle blood and blood derivatives. We're accredited to handle tissue. And we're accredited to handle what we call expiratory products. So that is saliva, urine, and fecal material. It also includes the activities that are under scope. And again, our biobank decided to go for accreditation to every single activity a biobank can do. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. You do not need to start with every single activity. The storage conditions, so what temperatures you are qualified to perform at, your procedures, and then the document IDs of your internal methods that correspond to those procedures, right? You see there data accessioning and storage. Those are the internal methods that we use for data accessioning and storage. Okay, I should put a parenthesis here and say that you do not need to get accredited to all the activities that you actually conduct and all the biological materials you handle, like we did. You can later request what is called a scope expansion by the accreditation body. We would do that if we wanted, for instance, to be accredited to handle, say, human specimens, which is actually something we are considering currently. So April 23rd, 2 short weeks after getting assessed, we receive our certificate of accreditation, which looks like what you see here in the left, and a seal of accreditation, which is what you see on your right, that is unique to our biobank. And we include that seal of accreditation in any document that goes out of our biobank on distribution or withdrawal. Okay, if you'd like to read more about our journey to accreditation, there was a short synopsis of how we've implemented and why we've implemented. We just published our implementation work in the Biobanking Journal, Biopreservation and Biobanking. It's ahead of print, but already available online. Okay, so what do we have in this accredited biobank? In terms of biobank products, we have nucleic acid samples, so we have DNA and RNA. We have blood and blood derivatives, so plasma, serum, peripheral blood mononuclear cells. We have tissue, urine samples. We have tissue control for pre-analytical variables. We collect matched formalin-fixed paraffin-embedded tissue and frozen tissue, and tumor matched with normal specimens. And we also have a patient-derived xenograft program for tumors. We have comprehensive clinical data, many times with outcome that comes actually from autopsy, which we called necropsy in the veterinary world, as you probably know. So in terms of service, we offer a rapid post-mortem collection, which is a signature service for our biobank. So when an animal reaches the end of its life, the animal is euthanized by the regular veterinarian or one of the veterinarians in our clinical team. The owner donates the body to the biobank by signing an informed consent. This is all done ahead of time. And then the tissue harvesting specialists organize the pathologists, they organize orthopedic surgeons, and a whole body tissue collection is done within 30 minutes to 1 hour of the patient's death. That participants really contributes hundreds, many times it's 200 or more samples to research. So pretty amazing impact. We offer fit for purpose prospective collections in case we don't have the materials you need. Our nursing team actually can go out and collect them. We have a biobank authentication procedure that was developed at Cornell by our board certified pathologists, and that's to verify the authenticity of any material that we collect. And we also offer quality testing of samples in our bioanalyzer. We do sample processing as needed, and then we offer storage solutions on a temporary basis. This is a service we actually implemented during the COVID-19 pandemic to just help our community here. Okay, finally at distribution, we document all of the processes that happen in our biobank for our user researchers, and we provide them by producing a material certificate in case we provide biological material. We provide a data certificate in case we are providing data to a user or researcher, or a quality certificate if we just tested the sample for quality. Okay, next, we're going to talk about biobank sustainability practices that we have implemented in our biobank to create a resource that really can continue to serve the research community beyond our time. I'll focus on how our accreditation has enhanced the sustainability of our resource. So at the Cornell Biobank, we use a sustainability model that was first introduced in 2014 by our colleague, Dr. Peter Watson. Peter is a pathologist, a really outstanding biobanker in Vancouver, and he introduced in 2014 3 dimensions of sustainability for biobanks: the financial component, which pertains to the value; the operational component that pertains to the efficiency of our operations; and the social component that pertains to the acceptability of the resource by its stakeholders. And just to remind you, the stakeholders are either the participants, the people that give us the samples, the sponsors or the funders that support our work, and the users or researchers that actually use our samples. So the key pillar of all biobank sustainability is utilization of samples. So we place great emphasis on the distribution or withdrawal of samples from our biobank. Okay, so to address the social components, we have implemented standardized practices through our ISO accreditation to instill confidence in our operations. And we also invite and engage participation from various stakeholders in our activities. On the operational front, we have implemented what we call scheduled check-ins with new faculty at Cornell within the first 6 months of their new faculty appointment to see what their sample needs are. And then we implement the collection practices in accordance with their needs. In terms of our internal efficiency, we limit the processing of the samples to what is necessary for immediate stabilization of samples. To address our output efficiency, we assess customer satisfaction by implementing feedback surveys at withdrawal or distribution. This is a practice that we've done for many years, but we just actually found out with the assessment last year that this is a practice that is required by accreditation, and appropriately so, I think. And I should say it is required to request the feedback. It is not required to have good feedback, right? It's preferable, of course, but the assessors cannot say all the feedback has to be good. It's good that we ask, was the sample fit for purpose? Was it fit for the analysis purpose that we had? So finally, actually, to address our financial sustainability, we've created a strategy for financial viability, which was, again, an ISO 20387 requirement. So this was a requirement of the standards. They don't say exactly how you need to have this strategy lined up. They just say you need to have one. But we had that available because we had prepared the business plan with our colleagues from the program Entrepreneurship at Cornell, and we revised that business plan on a regular basis. We also communicate value for the investment to all of our stakeholders through our marketing strategic plan, which we've created in 2016, and we update on a regular basis. And now that we have accreditation, we are really considered the reduced risk to many grant funding agencies that see our quality processes as a way to enable robust and reliable results that support that reproducibility in research. So our biobank has actually been included in more grant proposals since we've received our accreditation. And since that accreditation too, we've received funding from the National Institute on Aging, which is actually the story that I'll tell you about next. So the funding we received, as I said, from the NIA was to create a biobank of samples from the dog aging project participants. Let me tell you a little more about this exciting project that is the dog aging project. And I think that there are some colleagues on the call today that might know more about this project. It's a very exciting project. Okay, so the dog aging project is a long-term longitudinal study of the biological and environmental determinants of healthy aging in dogs to inform our understanding of aging in humans. So we're creating the largest longitudinal cohort of companion dogs that will include 10,000 dogs across the United States that are going to be followed over a period of 10 years. So far, we have 90,000 households in the United States that have applied to participate, and we are looking to reach about 250,000 households. We're accepting 1 dog per household and would love to have your participation. And you can join us at dogagingproject.org. And I should say that the Dog Aging Project is for all dogs, all ages, all sizes, mixed breed and purebred, every state in the United States. Oops. Okay, I apologize, I did something here. Here we go. Okay, so why are dogs good translational models for human aging? Well, dogs, unfortunately, as we all well know, age at an accelerated rate that is 7 to 10 times faster than humans. They share our disease burden and the relative risk for some diseases. They have a sophisticated medical care system. They share our daily environment, which means that they eat our food and many times sleep in our beds. And there's great variability in dog breed size and life expectancy. They also have a unique genetic architecture that offers a great system for the study of the genes that underlie the aging process. So those 10,000 dogs are going to be divided into 3 cohorts. But before I go into the cohorts, let me talk to you about the DAP pack. The DAP pack is going to be every participant in the United States that registers to participate in the dog aging project. If you fill out some survey data, you belong to our DAP pack. We are hoping to reach 250,000 households. We're currently at 90,000, but we really want to end up anywhere more than reaching 100,000 households. So please join us. So in terms of cohorts for dogs, from those 100,000 or more dogs, we're going to choose 8,500 to belong to our foundation cohort. And that will include dogs that will be genotyped and that the owners provide us access to their electronic medical records. Then we have the precision cohorts that will include about 1,000 dogs, actually exactly 1,000 dogs, for which we'll have whole genome sequencing and other omics data, such as metabolomics. And we're going to follow their activity. And at the intervention cohort, the participants will be consented to be a part of a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trial that we call TRIAD. So trial of rapamycin in aging dogs. And then we have these dogs here in yellow, which we call our centenarians. And those dogs are the dogs that we'll identify that are in the top 0.1% of lifespan for their size class. So they're our oldest dogs. They're going to be our special citizens. So I'm particularly responsible for adding a biobank resource to the dog aging project. And with that, I hope to expand access from a high quality clinically annotated samples to the wider research community working in aging, and that will allow for new hypotheses to be tested as new research tools become available. So as part of our biobank project, we're going to design, build, and implement a quality management system that is really an extension of what we have in our Cornell Biobank. We're implementing biobank collection levels by cohorts, which are the 3 cohorts that I told you about just now. So the foundation, the precision, and the intervention cohort. And we're going to increase our resource sustainability by promoting the biospecimen use from this unique resource. And we'll be doing that by implementing a series of sustainability practices that we've tested in the Cornell Biobank over the years, but that also include funding 4 pilot projects per year for junior researchers to use our biobank samples so they can use the data as pilots for larger grants. So 4 pilot projects per year and a series of other practices that we'll do to increase this resource sustainability. Okay, now the most exciting part of the dog aging project is its outstanding research team. It is this collaborative, interdisciplinary, nationwide team of really exceptional researchers who introduced me to Dr. Nicole Herhart, and through her to all of you. This is the team that is building a legacy through samples and data for the next generation of aging researchers. Sorry, we could not all fit in one screen. Together with the many households that have accepted to join us in the United States of dogs and their humans, and really it's the dogs and the humans that are joining us, we are the Dog Aging Project. So with all of this really exciting work, what is next, right? What I believe the future holds for biobanking is a project I'm currently working on with 2 of your fabulous leaders. One of them is on the call today, Dr. Nicole Herhart and Dr. Karen Hamilton, to start doing same household canine human collections. I really believe that will be the future of translational research. Okay, this is my acknowledgement slides. We're nearing the end, so we'll have tons of time for questions. I just want to tell you that I do not work with regular people. I work with this outstanding, empowered biobankers that really care for the lives they're helping to change. And so I want to thank my wonderful team at the Cornell Biobank that you see there on your right. Our phenomenal leaders at Cornell who supported us through this journey, the journey to accreditation, but also the journey to sustainability, which we're still undertaking, and the leaders of the Dog Aging Project, who, among many other benefits, have introduced me to you. So with that, I wanted to thank you and say that I'm available to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thanks so much. We have a couple questions so far.
Wonderful.
First one, can you speak a bit to the challenges of balancing the need to avoid bio hoarding with the need to feel very comfortable and / confident with decisions about responsible use of the bank's biological materials?
Absolutely. So Karen, the way we do that actually is by, we've created a biospecimen use committee, which is a team of researchers that are completely exempt, unbiased, and do not have any vested interest in the biobank. That team actually reviews the withdrawal requests that we receive for the scientific validity of the project that is being submitted, the interests that the researchers have, and the availability of our samples, and make a decision of whether the samples shall be used or not. Now, we do have a premise that we actually say this to one another, that all samples should be used. We really do not want to keep the samples waiting for the perfect project to show up. We want the samples to be used and then to understand if they're what we say fit for purpose or not. Now, it's sometimes difficult in the beginning while you're creating the biobank for everybody to have this mentality. So what we've done, Karen, was actually we really try to engage and partner with the people that have the same mentality as we do, because we do need to keep sustainability, and the only way that we keep sustainability, and in fact, actually the only way that we keep accreditation as well, is by using our samples and knowing what's right and what we could be doing better. So I really enjoy this accreditation process because it's all about improvement. It's not about perfection. It's like about this continuous improvement. And so it's been really outstanding to learn that we are a work in progress forever, and it's okay to be a work in progress. So, and even the assessors accept us as a work in progress. So I hope I answered your question, Karen, but please unmute and let me know if not.
Right, thanks. I think you mentioned that federal funding agencies view use of the biobank's biological materials as an indication of reduced risk when used in an application. Can you say more about this? Did you come from conversations with institute directors or program officers or some other sources?
Yes. So actually our summary statement from the NIA funding that we just received clearly stated that because we are accredited, so the accreditation gives confidence, right? Gives confidence that we know what we're doing, that we're performing to the highest standards, and that we're open for evaluation. And one thing that I didn't say in my presentation, Karen, is that the accreditation is for life. So we are really assessed every year. So we don't rest on our laurels on accreditation. And we knew this going in, but it is very clear that we are constantly striving to improve. And so that is clear also to the program officers and the grant reviewers. And as I said, they reflected that in our summary statement. They know that we're open to review, really, to know if we're doing is the best. And that I think instills confidence in them, as it does in anybody, right? All of our users and researchers, because we've seen an uptick of use of withdrawals, but also an uptick on wanting to put us in grants. And that's really, I think, a sign of success for us. Did I answer your question, Karen?
You did, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'll be looking at that Eiffel Tower and dreaming.
How does biobanking lend to precision medicine, and what is precision medicine?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. Okay. So precision medicine is really the right pill for the right patient, right? It's targeting individual treatment to the patient. And right now, this is interesting because I was just talking to Ali and Hannah because I did a presentation on this on Tuesday on how do we integrate biobanking with precision medicine. So precision medicine is right now something that is mostly available to cancer patients, right, when they come out of remission. So it's really on a late stage, unfortunately, but it's not what precision medicine it can be, right? Precision medicine can be for all of us, right? It's just targeting treatment to ours. And for now, actually, that's really focusing on genomics. So we're trying to use the other omics, and we use that through samples. So this integration actually of precision medicine and biobanking was first brought to my attention, I have to say, through Christie, right? So Christie was an oncologist, a medical oncologist. She was my mentor, and she benefited herself from precision medicine during her, her fights. She had breast cancer, and we did this group of women that supported her in the months while she was fighting the cancer. And so we got exposed with this network of people that support the patient as they're trying to fight the cancer. So what I learned actually is that there's the possibility for us to integrate these opportunities much earlier in treatment, but we're not quite there yet. And to be there, we really are depending on the samples that are available for the patient. So we're in a research phase, if you will. So if you can imagine, the importance of again, I'm going to bring accreditation, so you know that I'm passionate about this, obviously, but I think that the importance of accreditation is that really, that the sample that was submitted from Marta is indeed from Marta, right? So if I submit a tumor sample for myself, and there's no traceability on that sample, and then the sample that ends up being sequenced is a sample from somebody else, then how do you reconcile this? Like, who are you treating, right? So the importance of biobanks in this manner is really that, and as you've seen in the definition that I used in the beginning, is that you have that traceability of the samples, right? This is what we do. There's nothing else that biobankers are doing that is more important, which is to say that the sample that Marta contributed is the sample that will get to the hands of Karen, the researcher that's going to do something with it. And then to the oncologist that then gives a prognostic or indication or a new treatment indication for the patient. Did that answer your question?
All right. Next question. If someone has a dog or cat they may want to donate for the biobank, is their current age a factor? In other words, what criteria are there for pet donations?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. Okay. So the criteria is really all the open studies. So that I focus on utilization. So I really want your sample, but what I want is the same thing that you want, which is I want that sample to not be stuck inside a freezer, right? And so Christie used to say, and I think it was a pretty interesting approach, which is, nobody wants to die a second death in a freezer, right? Like you want to contribute samples and then you want those samples to be used. So they, so some other family doesn't have to go through the same that family just went through, right? That's mostly the intent of our participants, right? So let them be human. Well, the canines are voluntold, as we say, to participate in the biobank. So what I would say is utilization is key. So we currently only accept samples that we know have a researcher in mind, at least one, right? And then we do multiple. So I have a sample for you, and then I have a sample for somebody else that can benefit from it. But we do focus on utilization, and we do something called dynamic strategy. So every year we look back and we say, okay, what did we collect? What did we use? What was our utilization rate? And let's match what we used with what we collected. Did we collect more than what we needed? did we collect different samples than what currently the market is asking us, the researchers are asking us? So are we targeting the needs of the researchers? So we're always trying to kind of evaluate our operations, if that makes sense.
What other sorts of studies are you conducting at the biobank? I saw something on your website about genetic testing for Legg-Calvé-Perthes disease and a study of canine cancers. And a semi-related question is, how do you decide what animal species you will include at the biobank?
Oh, that's wonderful. Is this Dr. Getchell, our Dr. Getchell, or our Cornell Dr. Getchell? Or is this a, yes, okay. Hey, Rod, how are you? So Rod is actually one of our amazing, amazing fish specialists. So I depend on him for everything fish related. And yes, we do accept samples for every animal species. So right now, the only species that we do not accept samples for are humans. Sorry for those of you in the call. We've had many people actually ask us if they could bring our samples to our biobank because they believe in kind of our utilization goals. But we are not quite there yet. We're just working with these extraordinary participants. We do have many people that we say that sometimes at the end of the leash comes an extraordinary human, but we really are looking at the other side. And in the first question, sorry, I got distracted with Rod. Do you mind repeating?
That's fine. What other sorts of studies are you conducting at the biobank?
Oh, okay. Many, 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 many studies. So we're actually updating that page this week with our marketing team, but we are doing, lymphoma studies, a lot of lymphoma studies. Actually, lymphoma was Christie's passion, and we decided to keep her legacy alive by continuing some of the studies that she had. We have some aging studies, as you've just heard today, that we're supporting through the Dog Aging Project. And the Dog Aging Project really has about 55 different researchers that are looking at the aging process from different perspectives, which, as you know, I love different perspectives. And then we have, many cancer projects, hemangiosarcoma, lymphoma. So what our nurses are currently working on, actually, as we speak, is mostly surgical collections. But we also do a lot of postmortems. So we're also working on Alzheimer's disease. There's a variety of studies that we're learning more about from our researchers or users. So that page will be updated, and I'll send you an updated page in case any of you want to join us. But you also have a beautiful biobank in-house at Colorado State University, and I work with those colleagues as well. So you can contribute through them. We have a network of biobanks called part of COHA, the CTSA One Health Alliance. And we work together with Colorado to try to create this network that supports research. And so you don't have to contribute to one biobank or the other. You can contribute to the one that's closest to you and get the same benefits to contribute to research.
Thank you for that information. Do you frequently have serial samples or samples collected longitudinally from the same subject? If so, do you have to take extra steps to maintain their value as longitudinally collected sample sets when making decisions about their use for applicants?
Yes, what an interesting question. So serial samples, yes. I'm going to say that most patients, and we actually have two human cancer survivors that keep coming to me and saying that they want to submit their own samples because they've had really good outcomes with the treatments that they've had. So they insist, if you will, in doing serial collections. In the veterinary realm, it's really interesting, actually. Was this Karen that posed the question? I know that the questions come from the audience, but was you asking? Yes. So Karen, it's really interesting because what I found is that the clients that have participants with cancer will insist almost that we collect every week. They say there has to be something that you can learn from the rapid demise of my own, of my own animal, right? So sometimes it's heartbreaking, really, because I mean, many times it's heartbreaking because you know that our dogs go in no time, really. So we start these serial collections for a project that we really are not completely funded to do. We are just funded to collect a one-time sample, but then the patient says, please, I think this will be really informative. It's a huge opportunity. My dog is dying. Can we collect every week? And so we do, and we keep those samples, those serial samples, and then we are hoping to find what, then the big responsibility is to find a project that can benefit from those serial collections. And to actually, as we designed a study, that we don't design it for the participant, although of course we're very engaged with the participant, but we want to design a study that is used. So we actually go back to our researchers and say, you know what, if you could have serial samples from a lymphoma patient, how would you design this study? I know you don't have funding right now, but if you did, how would you design this? And so they tell us how to design, and we change our protocols to involve a serial collection. Or if they say no, serial collections would not have any value, then we stop. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, that was really, really very informative. I didn't realize you would go to people to help you design the studies. So thanks for adding that.
Yes, of course. And oh yes, go ahead.
I was just going to read it out. How does your group go about the consenting process, especially with the impacts of COVID?
Okay, that's a great question. I almost included a slide. So I just gave a presentation for our biobanking colleagues around the world, because we have colleagues really in countries that are struggling. They were struggling really with their core resources like biobanks before the pandemic, but now that the pandemic hits, and these are mostly, like, I would say exclusively with human biobankers. So many of them are physicians that were called out to support COVID patients, right? So these are biobanks that have been depleted in resources, including our most important resource, which is personnel, right? So how do we operate, and how have we improved with COVID? So I normally include that slide just to give you some kind of the silver lining. I know we've had a lot of bad news from this pandemic. There's a little bit of silver lining. The silver lining is that there's a lot of practices that we started conducting as biobankers that we never thought possible before. And Olivia, one of those practices is actually the e-consenting, right? So we no longer do consenting in person. In our veterinary hospital and many veterinary hospitals across the country, the humans are not coming into the hospital, right? So we are doing e-consenting and sending the consents on. They sign them and then return them back to us, and we collect the sample from the participant while it's in the hospital. We do a lot of phone consenting. We do a lot of email consenting. So these are all new practices, and this really created like a new era for biobanking, but also a new era of connectivity for improvements, right? So I'm now able to talk to my colleagues that are doing biobanking in Nigeria and learn from their perspective and learn from their experiences and implement them here, and the other way around, right? So the most interesting group we've had, Olivia, is actually, we have this from ISO, we have this group of biobankers from all around the world. So our colleagues in China were telling us how the pandemic was coming, right? And they were saying, how are we preparing our biobanks? So we learned. And so then the colleagues in Italy were telling us. And so we kind of had all of this international cooperation to see how are biobanks adjusting, what could we be doing better, how can we be surviving this crisis, right? And how can we be supporting the research community now in this COVID era, really, and making the best use of the resources that we have to support the community where it needs to be. So I didn't put that slide, but I'm so glad you asked. There are some wonderful things happening because of COVID, which is improvement of practices that we would never thought to improve before, such as consenting.
All right, we're reaching the top of the hour. Does anyone have any final questions? Feel free to unmute if you don't want to put it in the chat and ask the question live.
That is wonderful. Thank you. So if anybody needs has more questions that you didn't feel comfortable asking, biobank@cornell.edu. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.